get some upgradation to your skill set. So this Python training is brought to you by InterSkill. InterSkill is a group of like-minded professionals with a vision to help one another. So we are not any training institute or a formal organization, but we are a group of people interconnected to help each other and to upgrade ourselves in the current times where we need a lot of skill to survive and excel in the marketplace. So today we have Ms. Bindu K with us, who is a Python programmer and developer and working in a MNC here in Hyderabad. And she will be taking the classes today and the next week. So stay tuned and be focused. I also request all of you to rename your names with your email IDs so that it will help us in the communication forward. So we also want to inform you that there will be a small test at the end of these two sessions, and those who pass the test will also be given an e-certificate. So follow carefully, take the notes along, make sure that you understand. Any questions that you have, please put that in the chat box, and in the chat board if you put, we will answer them, Bindu will answer them in the break session. After 1 hour, we will take 5 to 10 minutes break. And after that, we will have these questions answered. And then we will go to the second session around 12:25. We will close and answer any further questions we have on the second session also. So as you get some doubts or questions, as you move along, just type it in your chat window, and that those will be answered at the end of the sessions. Anything that we cannot answer because of the time lag, we will answer offline. Basically, all those questions will be put into a Word document, and all the answers will be sent to you in your registered email ID or WhatsApp group. So stay tuned with that. Thank you, Bindu, for joining us today and for volunteering to come and help our people to get some, skill upgradation, especially on the Python. As we know, there's a lot of demand in the market right now for Python. So I want you to be focused, don't do multitasking, get the best out of this training. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bindu.
Thank you, Ravi. Thanks for the introduction and all. And okay, let's start with the things. First, today we're going to know or get to discuss on this topic called Python. Okay. So just first let us know what the agenda is. I'll just explain what we're going to do today or what we're going to discuss about, and then we'll start with the session. Okay. So first we'll be knowing about Python, what it is, and then why we have to choose. I think this question is really important because we have number of languages available in the market. So we just need to question which one and why. Okay, so that's why. Next one is why. And then the next question, I think most of you people have questioned yourself previously. Maybe not between Python and Java exactly, but between any other languages, you might have got confused. You might have questioned yourself why we should choose this, why not that, and all that. So with regard to Python, we'll just check with one language, probably Java, why we have to choose it. And then I'll give a sample program, including all the topics we are going to discuss today, so that you'll just get a structure of how Python looks and how the things exist, or we organize things in Python. And then we'll speak about data types, and then functions, and then file handling, exception handling, and then I'll speak about installation. That's quite simple, but just to mention, I just say a few steps like how to do it. And then hands-on. I think this is important because just listening to it does not help. That's one part, but the major part is practice. You have to practice once you listen to something. So I'll give you a few tasks or something like a simple application wherein you can put all the things which you learn in this session into an application, and then you can work on it. Then I think you will get a much better idea. So with this, let's start. Okay. So the first okay, so the first thing is why. What is Python? Okay, so the basic, definition we get from Google, I think most of you all might have heard it. If not, this is a basic definition we get about Python. That is, it is an interpreted, it's a high-level language, and it's a general-purpose language. It was created by Guido van Rossum in 1991. So when you mean, when I said interpreted, high-level, and general-purpose, so what does these words mean? So interpreted, Python is actually an interpreted language. There's also a compilation step to mention, that is, first the code gets converted to bytecode, and then this bytecode will be interpreted. So this, because Python is interpreted, we have a large number of advantages. First thing is that it is platform independent. Because it's first converted to bytecode, you can use this bytecode in any platform or OS. So this is removing that dependency with software and hardware. So that is one major advantage. And the next one is dynamic typing. So when probably you might have been aware of other languages, one or the other, either C, C++, or Java, something. So in all that, you see that first you have to define the variable. Okay, you have to define what data type it has and all that. So when after that you have to declare it, like assign some value or something like that. But in Python it's not the case, where you can directly use the variables, and it is up to the Python interpreter to assign or declare or identify what type of value it is, what type of variable it is. So this is one thing which is helpful, because this decreases the amount of code you write. Okay. Next one is high level. So when you mean high level, it is nothing but it's more like English like language. So it's user friendly mostly. So the syntax will be more readable. Okay. Then the next thing given to Python is general purpose language. So this is not language designed for some specific thing. Okay. This is for general purpose programming. Like you can do similar to Java, C, C++, all that. It's not specific to something. Okay, so with that definition introduction, let us see the few features of Python. The first thing is, as you see on the screen, is readable. So as I said, this is like English language. We also don't have like parentheses and all to separate the code. So it's like writing sentences with colons. Generally, you write a sentence, you put colon and go to the next line and all that. So it is more or less similar to English language. So the readability is really high. And the next one is easy to learn. So as I said, the syntax is simple. It is quite easy for a newcomer or someone new to Python or new to programming to easily adapt to this language. The next thing is free. Python is a freeware, so you can download it and use it as and when you wish to experiment with it. Okay? The next one is cross-platform. So cross-platform in the sense, here you can use Python scripts in other languages, and you can also embed other languages in Python. So it's cross-platform. Next is open source. So you get Python software as an open source. So you can just download it and then share, you can run it, you can add your features to it. So this is another advantage, added advantage to the things. And the next one is memory management. So when I say memory management, it means that the garbage collection is handled by Python. You need not worry about garbage collection. For example, you have 10 variables and you have used it in your program or something, and not variables. For example, you think some objects. We have to say objects in Python because it is completely object oriented. So few objects, there will be a reference to the objects. Okay. So when the object is deleted, probably the reference exists, or sometimes the object exists but there's no reference to it. So these all these are basically accumulated in memory. So instead of you identifying all that and cleaning up, Python takes care of it and it does the garbage collection automatically. So that is how the memory is managed. And then you have large standard libraries. Okay, so Python is known for its libraries, large set of libraries. For almost all the languages provides, like C provides header files, Java provides packages. It's common, like most of the languages provide libraries, but Python has a large set of it. like we generally say term it as modules. It's nothing but a collection of functions. Okay, module is nothing new, but it's a word or a keyword or term in Python to refer to collection of functions. Okay, so we have large set of them available in Python. That's a great advantage. We'll just look into what are available and all, and the next one is exception handling. So exception handling is also quite easy with Python, that you can easily handle the exceptions. What are exceptions, how to handle and all, we're going to look into it. But just to say that it's one of the feature of Python. Okay. So this is a little or brief info of Python. So let's look into why. So as I said, generally people question themselves whenever they are introduced to some buzzword or some new language in the market or something like that. We have to question. This is mandatory that you have to question why. Why should you choose it when there are large number of things? So Python has few features which makes it stand out of the crowd, and it clearly differentiates why you have to choose it in what scenarios. Okay, so I just put a picture on the screen. I think this itself explains a major feature or why Python has been chosen. I'll see the first thing, how non-programmer does a task and programmer does a task, and then a Python program. The Python programmer does this way. It's mostly because there are large number of libraries available. Okay, so that makes sense. Like, you need not write it from the scratch. Almost most of the things are available, and you can use it right away. So coming to its few outstanding things, provided features or whatever provided. First thing is a data science library. So Python is meant to used for data science. So it has large set of libraries available for the same. And next, it is embedded. As I said, you can use Python scripts in other languages as well. So it is embedded. The next one is IoT opportunities. So because of the language being more flexible and dynamic in nature, most of the users, like Instagram, and most of the applications or organizations are using Python for their applications. Next is object oriented. So Python is completely object oriented in nature, that each and everything in it is considered as an object. Okay, we look into objects and classes when we go to OOPS. Okay. The next one is extensible. So at the same time, you can also put other language codes in Python. Okay, like you can have scripting, you can have HTML, all this. So it is extensible. Next, you have an improved productivity. The prototyping with Python is easy as it gets as it is interpreted, and then you have very simple syntax, so less time to adopt it. So the effort and time is less, and at the same time the cost is less as it is a freeware. So clubbing all these things together, you see that the productivity will be improved. Next one is readability. Obviously, as I said, Python is more or less similar to English text or English language, so its readability is high, and the organization of the code or the lines in the code is in such a way that it's highly readable, because you differentiate between line and line with proper indentations and white spaces and all that. So this helps great readability. Next, it's portable, free, and open source. As I said, we have bytecode, so it's portable, and then it's free, and then open source. Okay. So these are the major things. There are a lot more things about Python, but these are the major things you have to keep in mind when you choose Python. Yeah. So with that, let's get into our regular question, or most obvious question, which most of us try to compare. I've just given Java here because mostly people tend to compare with Java, and as Java and Python being the most popular languages, I've just given this. It's nothing that you only have to compare with Java. You can compare with most other languages as well. So coming to the question, which one is right for you? As I mentioned here, there's no hard and fast or a fixed answer to it. It all depends on what you wanted to achieve, or what trade-offs you can take up and all that. Okay. So the first, so I've mentioned few points here, why to choose Python and why to choose Java. So it's a beginner's language, as I said. If you are new to programming and if you wanted to get into programming, then it is the first thing. And the next thing, it's for data scientists first, and then a programmer second. So the major thing you have to keep in mind is Java is for someone who does day-to-day program, like every day it's his job to program or develop things. So then mostly people choose Java. So Python is for data science, actually handling data. Okay, so it's nothing like you shouldn't use, you can use, but the best part of Python lies in data handling. So that is why Python is chosen for. And as I said, it's easy to learn, but it doesn't mean that it's the thing you have to adopt each time. The curve, the learning curve will be higher with Python, whereas with Java it is still slow, but its portable performance related things are different. So when you compare both, you have to choose which trade-off you need to choose. And then Python is mostly for machine learning and artificial learning and all that. So these are the areas where you should be choosing Python. And as I mentioned, Java, um, you see that you wanted to develop some web applications, you wanted to be a programmer, and then some Android things, video games and all, you choose Java. Okay? This is where you have to just choose between. So I think you're clear now on when to choose Java and when to choose Python or something. But it's not fixed, or it is not the same with everyone. But basing on the popular features available or provided by the language, we choose which one. So next, I just provided a sample program. So you can see here that first I have done the import calendar and hashlib. I'll just show you this in live also, but I'm just showing you once I start the coding thing, I'll show you in live. This is just to explain you, just an introduction kind of thing. Instead of just jumping directly, I'm just giving an introduction. So here you see the first thing, calendar, hashlib. These are the two modules imported. As I said, module is nothing but it's a collection of functions or methods. Okay, so you write some function for everything. For example, you wrote some function to add two numbers. Okay, so these two to add these two numbers, you write a function because you don't want it to each time to add two numbers. You don't want it to repeatedly write the same code, so you put it in something called a function. You have large number of many number of functions like that. So all these related functions, for example, addition, subtraction, multiplication, all these functions I put into a single something called package, something called module. Okay, so in that sense, in the simple senses, module is nothing but collection of functions. Okay, so collection of modules, again packages, and it goes. So here calendar is one and hashlib is one. These two are pre-built or built-in modules. Okay, it's Python will provide them. You get it along with Python. So I'm just defining a function here called hash file. So this is how you define a function. You use the keyword def. You have colon after the function name and parameters, and then you see there's an indentation here. Okay, so there's some space after the def line because you have to clearly say what lines come under this function. So it can be, it depends on the developer, one space, two space, or whatever. So for all the lines inside that function should have a similar number of spaces before them. So that's how we define the scope. We'll see to it in live, but I'm just explaining it here. And then you see I've defined two variables here, YY and MM. YY is for year and MM is for month. You see I did not define it first, saying it's an integer or something like that. I just directly assigned a value to it. Okay, so this is dynamic typing. And then I've used another predefined function called print, and then hash file, and then all that stuff. I'm calling the functions in the calendar and hashlib. As you see, calendar.month. Month is a method in calendar module. Okay. So this I just wanted to explain related to all the things we are going to discuss. You also see a try block here, try, except, else. So this is to handle exceptions. Okay, we're going to discuss about it in detail. So you see how the structure actually looks in Python. See in the def how the spaces are organized, and once the return statement is done, you see the YY variable is right towards the left. There's no space. It means that it is outside that function definition. Okay? So with this simple explanation of this program, we'll just get into the details. We'll just get into the data. So I'll just give little theoretical information about these data types, and then we'll jump into how they actually work. We'll just write few sample programs and then we'll look into it. Okay. So the first, let's get to know first what data types are there, what each one is meant for, and when we should use what and all that. We'll just discuss it on a brief or broad sense, and then we'll get into the actual live practicing of these programs or whatever. Okay. So we have 9 data types probably, and then the first one is numeric data type. In numeric, you have integer, complex, and float. Uh, so for integer types is nothing but all the positive and negative and whole number, means 0, 1, 2, and so on, minus 1, minus 2, and so on. So this is unlimited. There is no limit to the numbers, which the numeric data type can hold. So next one is float. So float is nothing but all the decimal ones, like 1 point, 2 point, whatever it is. So all those comes under float. Then next comes the complex number. Okay, so the complex number, as you all know, it's nothing but 1 plus j forms, like some plus j forms. Okay, so that is also handled by Python. And then you see Boolean. Boolean is nothing but true, false data type, bool type. And you have dictionary. Dictionary is nothing but key value paired set. For example, name, Bindu, okay, company, so and so, and so. So this is a name, and you have some key. Your name is a key and value is Bindu. So likewise, if you wanted to have something like that, you have dictionary. Then you have sets. Sets is nothing but a collection of elements, and they are not ordered. Okay, so I will just look more into it. I'm just saying here. So sets actually are unordered, and you cannot have duplicates because there is no order to it. So if you have some particular order, you can say, okay, first element is 5, but if there's no order, you cannot say 5, 5, right? So there's no duplicates allowed in sets. Next, sequences. In sequences, you have strings, lists, and tuples. Strings are nothing but collection of characters, you can say. So you don't have character data type in Python, so it's a string which you use for characters, okay? And collection of characters. Then list. List is nothing but a collection of elements, again, like set, but here list has ordering. Okay, you can have a certain index to it. So you can have duplicates here, and you can change a list. I'll say what mutable and unmutable is later. Just first let's listen about what all are existing actually. The next one is tuple. Tuple is another type of collection sequence available in Python. So tuple is also again ordered, but here you cannot change a tuple. So towards the left you see the list immutable and mutable. So immutable in the sense you cannot change once declared, once a value is given. Mutable in the sense you can change it. So in mutable you have all the numeric, string, tuple, and boolean. In immutable you have, immutable you have list, dictionary, and set. Okay. So when you meant as immutable, it means you cannot. So if you wanted to change it, you have to. If you try to change it, another object will be created for it. Okay. So the objects will be different if you try to change an immutable object. So I've given a table here where you can see first column is the names of the
Bindu, sorry, we just need pause for a second. Some of the participants have posted message like there's some air noise in between. Is it because of any fan in your room, or is
I've
there any way to check?
yes, I've off the fan and the AC as well. So
Okay, then we'll continue, Bindu. No problem. Please go ahead. Sure.
okay, so thanks.
Yeah, Bindu, go a little slower so that the words will be, clear in the.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
okay, sure. Okay, so as you see, the first so you see the first column, that is names of the data types, and the next that is the name of the classes. Okay, so the second column is the type, what type it is. So integer is considered as int type, float is considered as float type, string is considered as str type. So these are the types. When you you have a method called type, okay, function. So if you give what type it is, and it will print the type of that variable. We'll just look into it. So that's the type, and then there's a description. As I already explained, so the description you must be familiar with, as I already explained now. So we'll now just look into it in live. I'll just open some online editor and we'll try to do it. Okay, so this is a simple print statement. I just printed it. So now let's try to use some variables here. Okay, we'll take an integer first. I'll say int1, something like that. And I'll place 7. You see there's no error here because I did not define it. But in Python, as I said, it's dynamically typed. Next, I'll take some float value, f1. Let me take I1, it will be probably more simple. And f1, that is 5.7 or something. Then I'll take some complex numbers. 1 is equal to 1 plus, sorry, 1 plus 5j. And then we'll take list L1. So here, look at the, how the syntax is going on. See, for a list, you define it inside square brackets. Okay, so I'll just give some random values, nothing like some example values. Then we'll take a set S1. You see the set is in curly braces, and I take a similar set, something like that. And then we'll take a tuple. So inside the tuple again, I'll take some random numbers. Here you see that it's nothing like all numbers. You can have a combination also, just to make the thing simple. I'm just putting it because it's the first thing you're starting. I don't want it to make it too complex. Then I'll take a dictionary, and even dictionary is inside curly braces, but you have a key and value pairs. I'll just show you how. See, something like I'll put 1. The first value is something like 1, and take another one, that is 2. Okay, so as you see here, the first one is an integer, second one is a float, third one is a complex number, and the next one is a list. So you see the list is defined and values are included in square brackets. For set, you see it's inside curly braces. For tuple, you see it's inside parentheses or round brackets, braces. And for dictionary, you see it's again like a set, but you see it's a key value pair. 1 is key here, I mean numerical 1, and then the string, this is the value. So key and value are separated via colon, as you see here. Okay, so that's how it's different. Now let's see how we can fetch the values, do few operations on the same. So I'll just write for x in L1. So this is for loop. Okay, so for loop, you have a keyword called for, and then the next is the variable. Okay, this is the loop variable. You say x in Li, that means that in L1, sorry. So in L1 list, x will fetch one item at a time. Okay. So you see the colon here. Colon means the definition starts from here. You have to define the for loop or function or whatever it is after the colon. So press enter. You see it has started after 2 spaces. 1, 2. It is not mandatory that you have to define it only after 2 spaces, but minimum 1 space. It depends on the developer. So if you wanted to make it more clear or readable, you can increase the spaces, but there should be a consistency. Okay, all the elements or lines after in that definition should be with same spaces. So I've taken 2 spaces here, or by default it has been 2 spaces. So I'll just write something. So I'll just print. I'll print the x value here. So we'll just see how it goes here. the values in the list 4, 6 and 7 has been printed here. Okay. So in similar fashion, you can print all the set also. I'll just change this variable so that you'll see the how printing is or accessing the elements is similar for all the variable, all the collections. So it has printed the set, and you see the order is not fixed. You see 2, 5 and 7, and next time it might be something different, or it's random. It's because there's no ordering or there's no proper sequence in sets. Now I've printed set, as you see here it's S1. So you see on the output it's 2, 5 and 7. Okay. Next let's go to tuple. T1. So you see 1, 5, 7. Here again you see there's an order. Okay, so in which order you have defined it, in the same order you have got it. I'll also try to, we'll try to fetch it with that index so that you'll get more clear picture. Okay. And now I'll give D1. Okay, it's 1 and 2. And here you see it's only got the indexes. So if you want values, you have to give something like this. Okay. Or items. Okay. So then you get both the key value pairs. So you see here, for dictionary, it's different. You have a function called items where you can get both the keys and the values. So you also have dot keys, dot values and all that to get specifically the keys or values. Now I'll just try to randomly print some with some index like L1 of, okay, I have to put a print statement here. Print L1 of 2. So what do you think gets printed? Here, because it prints, okay, let's see. It has printed 7, but as you see 7 is the third element. So I think most of you all are aware of this. Most of the programming languages, the indexes starts with 0. Okay, so that is how here in L1 you see 4 is the 0th element, 6 is the first element and 7 is the second element according to the indexing. So when I gave L1 of 2, it has printed 7. The similar case with tuple. I'll get to sets last because that's not indexed. So I have given a tuple here. So let's see what will tuple print. So it again printed 7 because as you see in T1 again, the 7 is the second element. Now let's go to index. So given an index. So you see it has got the value here. So when I gave D1 of 2, it has searched for the key, which is 2. It will first search if 2 exists in this index, in this dictionary. So 2 is there. So it got the corresponding value. So if I give something like 4, we'll see what we'll get. See, you got an error stating that key error. Key error means there's no such error, there's no such key in that dictionary, but you're trying to access it. So I said 4 here, but 4 does not exist in that dictionary. Okay. So similarly, I'll try to get the values in a set. So we'll see what, you see that there is a second element, second indexed element. 3 elements are there in the set. So index is proper, but we'll see what error will be thrown. You see, set object is not subscriptable. You cannot have a subscription. Subscription in the sense this square braces. You cannot access elements with this square braces. So it is throwing an exception. Okay, so that's how it works. So I'll just comment this. Okay. Okay. Next, let's look into this addition. How do we insert into a list? How do we insert into a tuple, and then a dictionary and all this? And then later we'll see how we can remove or something. If you're not able to get into all the functions, we'll just discuss few at least, so that you'll get an idea. And However, the documentation is completely really simple terms. You can use them right away after reading it. So I'll just give few just for your understanding. So now I'll try to give L1 of maybe some 3. Okay, so I'll give something called 9. So now we'll try to print it. The same thing I'll copy here. So I'll give L1. So we'll try to print it. Okay. So it's showing an error saying that line 12 index error. List assignment index out of range. Okay. Sorry, I have to insert it. I cannot assign it this way. I have to append. I was actually trying to, the previous one which I've said is I'm trying to modify the existing index value. So if I'm accessing like L1 of something like square braces, it means that you're trying to access an element in the existing list. So that's not correct. So now I'm trying to append. I've given append. So let's see. So now you see it did not throw an error. So I think this is one case. Okay, you have to use append to add indexes, to add elements to the list. Okay, so when you use subscript, it means that you are accessing elements inside already existing in the list. Okay, so this is how it works for list. So I can also remove it. I'll just try to use remove. Okay, I'll just keep this for reference. I'll just write one more new one. See here again, I am not, when I gave this way, enter, you see the cursor has been placed right below the print statement. So I shouldn't be writing my code here because I don't want it as part of the for loop. I want it outside it. So I've not mentioned that indentation or white spaces, so that I'm making it clear to the interpreter that I wanted to write it outside for loop. If you wanted to write inside the for loop, you have to maintain that space or indentation or whatever. Okay. Okay. Now I'll try to remove one element in it. So we have remove method. I have to remove the existing element. If there's no such element, then it will throw an error. So I'll just remove 6. Okay, and one more thing to be noted here, as you see in the output, the elements printed were 4, 6, 7, 6. You see 6 has been repeated twice. So here duplication is allowed, okay, in lists. So I've removed it. Now let's try to again print it. Okay, so now you see it has removed 6, but where did it remove? You see the second element is 6, and again the fourth element is 6, but it has removed the second one. Why? Because remove removes the first occurrence of the element. Okay, so that's how it works. So if you wanted to mention the index or something, you have del function, del keyword, and then you have pop to mention the index to remove some elements. So you have number of them. Del is actually to remove the complete list also, and it deletes the variable or the list completely. There will not be any instance of it in the memory. So if you wanted to only just empty the content of it, you can use clear method. Okay. So these functions are similar to other things, but the contradiction things or few things to be noted, I'm going to mention here. Like for example, if you see S1, I mean the set, okay, for this set, you don't have an index. It is not ordered. So you cannot say something like, insert at some particular item, remove some particular item. You cannot access, as I said, print S1 of 2 is not possible because you don't have an index to it, as it has thrown an error. So coming to tuple is immutable, so you cannot change it. So I'll just try to change it here for your something. I'll just try to do append, and okay, that's enough. I think there itself it will throw an error. As you see, I try to append it. You see an error, attribute error, tuple object has no attribute append because you cannot modify it. Or I'll just make it more simple. I'll just try to modify the existing element so that it will give the exact error or whatever, which will make more sense to you. So the first element, I mean, the element at index 1 is 5 in T1, as you see. So I'm changing it to 9. So let's see how it works. See, it give an error or an exception saying type error. Tuple object does not support item assignments. Okay, so you cannot modify it. It's immutable. Okay, so what else? What are the differences? I've told that dictionaries for key value sets doesn't have index, so I've shown if you mention an index, it will throw an error. Then for tuple, I told immutable, so when you try to change it, it has thrown an error. And what else? I'm going to tell only the most things you have to keep in mind. The regular things you, however, will be learning with a simple pace. The things which are a little difficult or little deviating from the general things in other programming language, I'm going to discuss most of it. So that is how it works. Okay, let's get into our PPT. So I think I covered most of it here. If you miss something, we can just cover it. And if you have some doubts or something, or if I do remember something, I'll just again share with you. So let's get into functions. Okay, so what functions are actually? Okay, so functions, when you say function, it means that some task, right? Literal meaning of function itself means some task. You're going to perform something. This is going to perform something. So why do you ever have to need a function? You can simply write code. You can simply write, lines of code, and you can have it very simple. Why do you have to have something called function, call it, maintain it, and all that? So the simple answer is you have to see the bold things which I've mentioned on the screen. Simple answer is these 3 points. Code reusability. When you write some function, you can use it again and again by just calling it. Okay, by calling function, you can use it a number of times. So there's code reusability. So someone else writes some function and you can use it. So that is how modules help, right? Modules is a collection of functions. So those functions, it has been developed by the Python organization or corporation, and then you use it. And you can also have your own user-defined functions. So here code reusability happening. Okay, that's really good because you need not write from the scratch. Suppose you wanted to deal with some files or something, you need not write how to open, how to read bytes, and how to understand the content in it, how to get it. So you need not write all that from the scratch. You have methods to open it, remove it, read it, write it, and all that. Okay, so that's very important. Because if you have to write it all from the scratch, it's quite difficult. Next thing is it improves the readability. So why does it improve the readability? Because if you wanted to do some task, you just see a line called calling. That function call line only you will see. You will not see the function definition completely. Okay, so readability is high. There's some organized structure. So as you saw in the previous example, the function definition has a proper structure to it. Okay, some depth and then some indentation, content in it, and then again you start some other code. So it makes clear, it's neat and clear. Okay, so it improves the readability. Next, it avoids redundancy. As I already said, already existing code you will be using. So when you're using already existing code, you are not writing it repeatedly. So there's no redundancy here. For example, if you wanted to add two numbers, so this time you had two numbers to add, you wrote code like A, B, you declared two, and then you printed A plus B. Next time you got two more variables like X and Y. Again, you write something X, Y, and print X and Y. So this print statement or whatever, it is repeating many times. So this is quite simple. I'm just telling giving an example. But when you go to complex things, okay, so repeatedly doing this or writing increases the number of lines in your code. So that decreases the maintainability, readability, and waste of time and all that. So that is where functions help. We did not write same code, similar code redundantly. Just passing the two values to add function will do the job. Okay. So I think you are aware of functions. Like it is similar to the functions in other languages. It's nothing but it's used only when it is called, and then you can pass arguments to it. So it will be working on those arguments, and then it can return a value and all this. So we'll get into definition in live. I'm just giving you theoretical things required first. The first you have to get to know what it is, what are existing and supported by Python, and then we'll go into live things. Okay. Then see towards the left, I've just given a simple cartoon thing like, so first you have a person called func, or it's a function. Then you see beside it, someone is trying to access it. So if you wanted to do something, just call it, yeah, job is done. So it's that simple. Okay. So the one towards the left, it is right. It is syntax of basic syntax of a function. You see the first keyword. So as I already mentioned in the sample example, a function starts with def keyword. Okay, you see def, and then followed by a space, and then you see function name. You don't have any, I mean, hard, fast, mandatory things like you should follow this naming specifying something, but it can be as you wish. But to increase readability, generally you have few, conventions. I just speak about it later. So as of now, it's simple. Add is the function name. Then you see the parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis, and that has the arguments or parameters in it. Okay. I've used two words here, argument and parameter. You need not worry what they are and how different they are. Both are more or like similar, but that's something like developers differentiate, saying when you call a method, the things you pass, the values you pass are called arguments. Okay, arguments. So this function which is receiving the values is called parameters. So it's just to differentiate like that, but it's not like completely different. It's just to differentiate between the things passed and things you receive. That's it. Okay. So x and y are the parameters, and then you see the print statement. So there I'm printing function arguments are x and y and so on. So okay. Then you see the return value. So I'm returning here. Return starts with a keyword return. Okay, return is a keyword here. So with that you can return values. And again, you are not you're maintaining some indentation. You see, print statement and return statement are in same line, starting in same line. Okay. So now let's get into what types of functions are supported in uh, Python. So in Python, there are 4 types of functions: user-defined, built-in, lambda, and recursion. So user-defined, you define some function. You wanted to write something, some code, for some specific task or something. So you can define it. You have built-in functions, like you're already familiar with one function which we have used earlier. You can guess? Print statement. Okay, so print function, or not statement, sorry. Earlier it was statement, now it's function. So print function we use, that's a built-in thing. And in calendar, we used a month function. That is one more. So there are quite number of functions and things available, because that is what Python is famous for. So we have number of built-in things. Next one is lambda. We'll speak about what lambda is. Okay, you have lambda functions. That is nothing but anonymous functions. Okay, if you wanted to just, you have a one-liner function, just a single line. So for that you don't need to define it and store it and all that. So you just have something called lambda. Okay. Next is recursive function. I think this is not new. Recursion is not new. In other languages as well, recursion, where a function calling itself is called recursion. Okay. So just let's finish the details or theoretical details you need to require, and then we'll go to live. So I think for 11:30, it's 10 more minutes. So we'll just speak all the required things about function, and after the break, we can have a live things. Okay. Now, okay. So you see this lambda thing towards the left. You see lambda syntax, for example, or whatever. So you see this f that's nothing but the object which receives the output of the lambda operation. Then is equal to, and after the equal to, you see actual lambda function. So a lambda function starts with a keyword lambda, and then after that you have set of arguments, then you have a colon, and then you have the expression. So the colon separates the arguments and the expression. You can have number of arguments, you can have any number of arguments, but the expression is only one. Okay, so lambda function can only work on one expression, but number of arguments. Okay, we'll have a live example of the same. Just giving you a simple example here, just to understand what lambda is. And you use lambda when you don't want it to, when you want some anonymous function, like in some function definition, you want some one-liner function or something short-lived, then you use lambda. Then when you go towards the right, it is a recursive function. As I said, a function calling itself is called recursive function. So there are no like keywords or something here. You don't have something to define that this is recursive. Like as you see, for lambda, you have a keyword called lambda to say that this is lambda function. But for recursive, you don't have something like that. As you see, you have defined a function called recursive. Okay. Inside the definition, you have again called the recursive function. Okay, so this is called recursion. Function calling itself repeatedly. This is to find, do some task like repetitive tasks. For example, find the Fibonacci of a series, print something like that, complexly doing things, recursively, factorial and all that. I think you're familiar with these words. And most of the things we do in C, C++, Java, everywhere we find these recursive things. Okay. So these are, we'll define one, user-defined one. We have already used a built-in one, and we'll also see an example of lambda and recursive in our examples in our live demo. So just to give a brief knowledge of what it is instead of just jumping into the code. Okay. So the next important thing you just have to keep in mind is the default arguments. As I said, for a function, you can pass arguments. So these arguments, if sometimes you somehow don't want it to pass all the arguments, then it might cause an error or an exception. If suppose you see here, there's a multiply function and it is taking two parameters, x and y. So sometimes you don't wish to pass both the parameters. Sometimes you don't, have values for a few of the parameters. Then you need not pass it. So how can we, handle this situation? With default arguments, okay? So as you see, y is equal to 0 means if user does not specify any value for y, you take it as 0, okay? So that is how default arguments come into picture. So a simple example, I'll just explain it here. So the value of y is 0. So when the user is calling with multiply of 4, it does times 4 into x. So this is an ordered thing, okay? So the first one will go into first, second value will go into second. So this argument list is ordered. You cannot jumble or anything. So 4 goes into x. The next value is x. So it means you did not give any value for y. So the next return statement executes. In the return statement, x into y means 4 into 0. So it has returned 0. You see here, 0 has been printed. So that is how things are handled with default arguments. So shall we take some short break or something? As you wish. Ravi, what do you say?
Yeah, sure. We can. Yeah, now it's 11:25. We can have some 5-10 minutes break. And those who want to have some tea, coffee, you can do. Others can actually punch in your questions here. Some questions have come. You can put your questions, then we will get answered after Bindu comes back. Okay, so there is one question regarding recursive function. How is recursive function not going into infinite loop? So this is a common problem in recursive function. Recursive function is a function that calls itself. So you need to have one if statement within the recursive function when you want to stop. That's where you will stop. For example, factorial, if you see, factorial 10 is basically 10 into 9 into 8 into all the way to 1. So when you are defining factorial function, you should define if n equivalent to 1, that return 1. So that's where it stops. So when you're defining a recursive function, it is very important that you understand how you are going to stop or when you are going to stop. So that's how the recursive function will get stopped, and then again it will calculate backwards. So that's about the recursive function. I think rest of the things, yeah, some people are asking for recording that will be given to you at the end of the sessions.
And just to mention, as Ravi has all mentioned, I mean, all the details for this. You mentioned consider this as a base condition. Okay, for every recursive things, you have something called base condition. So that base condition, when it is satisfied, the recursive thing will stop. So you have to keep in mind that if you don't properly define the base condition, it will always go into infinite loop and it will make things messy. Okay, so base condition is important. As just Ravi has mentioned, if it gets to 0, if the index gets to 0 while finding some factorial of Fibonacci or something, it means that is base condition. Okay, that what defines when the recursive should stop. available, probably I can
Yeah,
start.
Bindu, actually, questions are shared on the Word document. If you're
Yeah,
able to see it, I guess.
yes, okay, then I will start. Okay, so what's the difference between a set and dictionary? As I already said, set only accepts values, but dictionary is something called key value pairs. Okay, set is a set of values, but dictionary is a key value. I showed an example, right? Like one is index, and then I have given a string to it, colon space string. So that is how the dictionary works. Okay, and both are sequences. And you cannot change a dictionary, whereas you can change a set. So these are the differences, mutable and immutable. Next one I mentioned, I think I mentioned all the nine. Probably I'll again show you on the screen. And then, okay, I'll just say them all. We have integer, float, complex. Okay, one is integer, two is float, three is complex, four is boolean, five is set, string, 5 is string, 6 is set, 7 is list, 9 is tuple, okay, 8 is tuple, 9 is dictionary. Okay, so there are 9 here. On the screen also you have 9. Next thing, difference.
Bindu, you
Okay,
can skip the questions if you have already answered during the session. These
okay,
were collected during the session time. Like, try to cover which were not covered in the session part.
okay, Sudhir. Okay, then mutable, immutable, I'll show you via example. And then, okay, I'll try to run the sample program for sure. And then recursive not in loop has already been answered. Printing, instead of printing list on the same line, yes, you have something called, you can, construct the string to get printed on the same thing. And then question number 11, instead of 11, is there any code coverage tool? Yeah, you have something called coverage.py. That tool is available. There are a number of tools for code coverage in Python. Okay. And then you have when the function goes into loop, will it throw errors similar to syntax errors? No, it's a logical error. You have to deal with the loops. When it goes into infinite or something like that, it is you who have to handle it. That goes into logical error. It's not an exception. Okay. It is 13th one. Is it not necessary to assign data type in program like it's a string less one? Yes, you need not mention the data type. It's dynamic typing. Then 14. How Python will understand whether data is integer string according to the value you give. Okay. 13th one is answered. You need not define it. You can directly declare it. 14th one is you need not mention the data type. The Python interpreter will understand it because it is based on the value. Okay. If you give 2, simply 2, it's an integer. If you give 2 point something, it's float. If you give 2 in single quotes or double quotes, it's a string. If it is a list, it should be included inside a square braces, so something like that. So how the fashion in which you declare the values to it, it will understand what data type it is. Okay. Next one, code coverage is already done. That's the 11th question. Okay, then do you recommend to download Python from any open source music to practice? Actually, you have it on python.org directly in official website. You have the things to download, so you're not going to some third party or something. So I'll give the links towards the end of this session. Instead of printing a list set on a different line, do you have chance to printing? And it's all everything is possible in programming. It's all in the style and how you design your codes. That's it. Then I think I can start sharing my screen. Okay, so we are still in functions now. Um, I'll just show sample program. We'll write all the functions required. Okay, so again, we came back here. So as already said, print is predefined function. So I'll just comment this thing. See, it's a comment starts with hash. This is a single line comment. If you wanted to I have multi-line comments, you can use something called triple quotes. Okay, start and end. This is multi-line string, but you don't assign any variable to it. It's considered as a comment. I'll just show you here. See, uh, so this is multi-line. Like this is multi-line comment. I'll just try to run it, and you'll see that this part of the string is not printed. See, the one which I wrote here, this is multi-line comment, is not printed on the results pane console because this is a comment. So this is actually a string. To say it's a string, and you can just assign it to S1 some variable, but as I did not assign it to anything, it's considered multi-line comment. And single line comment, you already see that's a hash. Okay, you see in line number 11 and 12, it's a single line comment. Okay. Now let's get into functions. Let's have some user-defined function. So I'll start with def. Okay, so def is the keyword to define a function, and then you give some function name. I'll give simple function add, and you have to give parenthesis. Parenthesis if is to handle the parameters. Okay, so if you do, even though you don't give any parameters to it, you have to simply open and close the round braces, and then you have the colon. Colon indicates that the definition starts from here. If you miss the colon, you will get an error. So again, I entered, and it is the cursor is after 2 spaces because indentation should be there for Python, because in general programming languages, you see you'll have a curly brace. Okay, you see something like this. Okay, so this is how in normal programming languages we do, but here you need not mention that way. You just need to have some spaces, at least 1 space. I'll just show you with 1 space so that you can confirm it that you don't need to have any, it's not hard and fast or mandatory that you have to these 4 spaces, 5 spaces, like you can do anything. I'll just take 2 variables, A, comma B. And again, here you see that for A and B, I'm not giving any data type here. Generally, for other languages, you have int A, comma int B. So you have to say what type of parameters this function is going to deal with. But here I'm not mentioning anything. So this is how Python gives you the freedom and the flexibility to write. So I just took 2 parameters, A and B, and then I'm just adding them and I'm printing them. So now let's call it. So function is useless unless you call it. Okay, if you don't call a function, what is the point of writing it? Because it's never going to get executed, or it will never get run. So I'll just call this function add, and I'm giving 2 values, 6, 2. Okay, so let's run it. You see 8 has been printed here. So one more thing to point here is I can just I'll just give one more variable called sum is equal to A plus B, and I can print sum here. But at the same time, if I want to give some information to the user, I can say sum is equal to, and I can do it here, but here it will throw an error. See, what is it saying? Type error, can only concatenate string to string, not an integer. You see, A plus B is a integer result. A is an integer, B is an integer, you get result as an integer. So sum is an integer. But whereas in the double quotes, I have mentioned sum, and that is a string. Okay, anything inside a double quote or a single quote is a string. So you cannot add a string to an integer. So instead, you have something called format function. I'll just tell you here. See, I'll just build up some text to be printed. So I'm saying sum is equal to, and I'll put some double quotes. This is the formatting here. So text dot format, then I'm going to mention sum here. Okay. So inside the double quote, sum will get replaced. So you see here, now it's clearly neatly printed that sum is equal to 8. So this is how you do the formatting. Okay. So you have, as I said, the number of things you have available in Python to style your things, how it looks on the console, how the output looks, and how you can have it neatly aligned in your own formats. Okay. So here it is a user-defined function. It is a simple function, def add function. So you can also put it in some modules. Okay, you can have some py script which has all the user defined functions, whatever you define, and then you can import it and you can use it. We'll just look one, maybe probably I'll just write one file, my mod, I'll just say, okay. So here I'll just write some function, print name, and I'm going to define it, and I'll just print my name. Just simple, I'm not complicating things. Okay, so in main, what do? I have to import it. Import, what is my mod. So one thing to note here, when I imported this module, all the functions in the module will be available for you here. Okay, so if you wanted to import only specific function, you can use from keyword. From my mod, import, what was the name? Print name. Okay, that's it. Sorry, from this is spelling mistake. That's it. Okay, so now I'm going to call that function. I'll show you different versions of how you use the functions from other modules, how you call them and all that. This is one thing. Okay, so I straight away call the function name which I have imported. So let's see what result it will print. So you see Bindu has been printed the last line. So I've called the function from different modules by using import statement. Now you use two keywords here, from my mod import print. Let me put another function into it so that it will be clear that we are not able to access the other functions. Print hello. Okay. HELLO. So now I'll try to access even that thing, that function HELLO. So it's already showing me an error here stating that undefined name print hello. Okay, so it's obviously shows me an error, but I'm just running it. See, it's saying it's not defined. So this is because I did not import this function. I have just specifically said I want print name function from my mod module. So for example, I want all the functions from that module. Then I say simply import. Okay, so I'm importing it, and now you see what happened to my print name. It is also saying print name is not defined because you did not mention to the compiler that you are importing this function. You just said the module to be imported, so you cannot call the function directly like this. You have to use the dot operator. Okay, so my mod dot print name. Similarly, my mod dot print hello. So from your module, you're calling these functions. So now you see that error won't happen. You'll be able to print both the statements. See here, Bindu and hello both got printed. So this is how you use modules and functions inside them. As I said, if you want, sometimes you don't want to load all the functions available in the module, then you can simply select the simple, the specific function if you want, as I earlier did, from my mod import print name. Okay, that is how you do if you wanted to import specific functions. But if you wanted to import the complete module, all the functions in the module, you use import module simply. But here you have to use the module name dot to access those functions. Okay, just as I did it here. Okay. Next, let's go into built-in function. We have used print statement. Okay, let's use lambda function here. Okay, I'll just say def my And then let me take some variable n. So this also helps you to, helps me to explain parameters also. So I'm taking some parameter, and then I'll take a. Okay, I'll say return lambda a colon a into n, something like that. Okay. So I take some variable is equal to, I'll call this lambda function lamb. I'll say I'll give 2. I'll say print. I'm going to print the var value. I'll give something like 7. So let's see how it runs it here. See, 14 is printed. So how did this happen? Here, first lambda keyword. After that, we had defined one variable a. After the colon, you're having the expression. I said there should be only one expression, that is a into n. This is an expression. So I'm saying multiply a with n. So this lambda function, I have assigned the return statements to a variable called var. Okay. So this is how you call the lambda functions. Okay. So that is how 7 was passed to mylamb, and mylamb has taken the input 2, means it is going to double, and the variable which you have assigned is 7. 7 into 2. Okay, so it has printed 14. So to make it more simple, I'll just give a simple example. See, lambda, the one I've given in the screenshot, a comma b. So I'll just add both of them, and then I print x. Or you can just put the same thing here, just to make it simple. Just, oh, sorry, I didn't give values to it, right? Sorry. See, 7 has been printed. So this is how you call a lambda function. You can assign the output of a lambda to a variable, and there that variable you have to pass the inputs to. Okay, that variable acts as a function, to be simple. So x acts as a function here. So you're passing the inputs to it, parameters to it. I've passed 2 comma 5. So 2 goes and sits in A, 5 sits in B. So 2 and B values are passed, and 2 plus 5 is 7. Okay, this is how lambda functions work. So I'll okay, lambda is done. Let's go to recursion. Okay, I'll just say def myrec, and I'll just give some value, some n, and then colon. Sorry, see, I've given a colon inside and it's showing an error. Now, if n not equal to 0, then, so if n is equal to 0, return result. Okay, so else result is equal to result plus n. Okay, I did not define result here, so I'll just put result is equal to something called 0. Then I'll say n. I think I don't need this else statement. Result is equal to result plus n. Sorry, that is myrec of n. Nice. Okay, so here what I'm doing, I'm just taking one variable and then I'm adding it. Okay, for example, I've given 10, so I'm adding 10 plus I'm again calling the function 9 plus again calling the function with 8 plus again calling the function with 7. So it goes likewise. Okay, so this is a spelling mistake result. Okay, so good to go. Let's try to call this function my rec of 5. Let's try. Okay, I just have to print this statement is equal to some res, and I'll just print this result. Yes. Okay. So let's try to run it. Okay, it has given me number of errors stating that result plus myrec, and it's saying unsupported operand type S for integer. So somewhere I'm trying to add an integer to addition operator. Okay, so I will try to change this. Or it's a none type. I'll just put 1 here, and then I'll just try to do is equal to 1, then what to return it. It's again saying the same thing. Okay, I'll just try to take the same variable again. I'll try to print it instead of getting too complex. Print n, and then I'll do n is equal to n minus 1, and then I'll not have anything here. I'll just give a print statement here. Break. Break is outside the loop. I'll return something called n. Res is equal to z. Okay. Now let's run this. Okay, so now you see it has printed this values. Okay, so this is how recursion works. As you just sorry, I think I did not use myrec here. Okay, sorry, I'll just use this myrec version here. Else part, and then I'll print it. So sorry, I just printed the things. I did not use myrec. I'll try to print the statement and call myrec. Myrec of n, and then I'll call my rec of n minus 1. Okay, so okay, first I'm trying to catch 5, and then n is not equal to 5, so it will go to else part, it will print the value, it will again call the recursion function with 4, it will go again, it will not compare with it's not equal to 1, it will go to else part, it will continue, and until it equals to 1. Let's try this. So here you see 5, 4, 3, 2, and my base condition is that 1. So when n is equal to 1, I don't want any more the recursion to happen. So I am stopping it by returning the 1 value. Okay. So if you keep it as 0, it will run until 1. When it is 0, it will break the recursion. Okay. So as earlier I have mentioned, for every recursion statement, you need a base condition. If this base condition is not satisfied, or if this base condition does not exist, your recursion happens time and again. It will go in an infinite loop, and that will give unexpected issues or whatever abnormalities. So that is reason you have to use recursion with much care. You have to see what the base condition, what should be satisfied, and when you should break out of the loop. Actually, to say it's recursion. Okay. So I think I've mentioned all the things, whatever we have discussed, we have seen in this example. Probably we did not look into this default argument. Okay, we'll just look into that as well. Okay, here in add function, I've given a and b. I did not give a default variable to it. So I will make b as a default variable. I've given b is equal to 7. So in this add function, I'll not give the b value for b. I just passed one argument, but actually you have to pass two arguments to add. But here, as I passed only 6, 6 goes and sits in a, whereas for b I didn't give any value, but there's a default value that is 7. So you see in the console the sum is 13. Okay, so that is how default arguments work. So I think I've given examples for all the things we have discussed for functions. Now let's shift to, I'll show it in slide show. Okay, the next thing we have to discuss is file handling. Okay, so for file handling, generally we deal with files most of the time and we open it and we read it. So the similar way in Python, you have number of things, keywords supported for it. We have function for opening, writing, reading, all that. So the basic thing you do is with open function. Okay, first you have to open it. So with what intention are you opening it? Are you opening it to read, or for writing, or for executing, or for what? Okay, so let's get some simple things here. You see, first thing is for read. So this is for read. We are going to have some live example for the same. I'll just give some theoretical things here. R is for read, W is for write, X is for create, A for append, B for binary mode, T for text mode, and plus is if you wanted to open it for two things, reading and writing. So what is the differences between all this? I'll just show you. First, when you're opening a file, as you see in the first row, opening a file, you have to open it with some kind of mode. Okay, so when you open it with R mode, it means you open the file just for reading. You cannot edit it. Okay, so along with R, you can give something like RB, RT. It means that you're opening in a text mode, binary mode. Okay, binary mode is for bytes. It's going to handle with consider it as set of bytes, but it's text set of characters. Okay, so in the first example you see demo file.txt. It means that this file exists in the folder in which you are there, so you need not give the complete path. Whereas in the second example you see that you have provided the complete path. Okay, this is the best thing whenever you deal with file, because instead of getting things clumsy, like suppose you're giving you're thinking that file is in this folder but it's not there and all that, to avoid all that you give the complete path. It's simple and neat. Next, you see here I've opened the file in the third column, and now after that I've said f dot read. So this read function reads number of characters. Next, read line. To read a line, one line, first line. So if you wanted to read all the lines, you have to, as you see in this fourth row, you can give print statements accordingly, or you can put it in a loop as you see in the fifth column. So you see in the fifth column, I'm fetching each line at a time and I'm printing it. The last thing, closing a file. So this is important. So this is just for reading. So for writing, similarly, you have to either open it in append mode or in write mode. So what is the differences? So just basically below also you see we are opening with X mode, that is create mode. So I'll just tell you the difference between all the four. X is for creating. So when you're creating, if the file already exists, it will throw an error. Okay, else it will create a new empty file. Read. A read will create a file if the file, if the file does not exist and you're trying to read it, it will throw an error. Okay, next, write. Write will create a file if the file is not existing. If it is already existing, then it will overwrite the complete content. Okay, I'll just repeat the things. First, let's see. The next one is append mode. For append mode, if the file does not exist, it is going to create a new one. If it already exists, it will add the contents to the end of the file. Okay, if there are two lines, my name is Rupa, I'm an employee. Then if you're trying to append some data in append mode, then the next line, Okay, I'm 29. So this will be added as a third line. So it happens that way, in that fashion. Okay. So the main difference is if you open it with X, it will create, but if it already existing, it will throw an error. Read mode. If file does not exist, it cannot read, right? So it will throw an error. Write mode. If the write and append will not throw errors. Okay. So write mode, if a file does not exist, it will create one. If it is not exist, if it's already existing, it will write the content, but it will overwrite it. So be careful when opening a file with W mode, it will overwrite the complete content. Next, append mode. Append mode also does not throw any error. If there's no file, it will create one. If there is a file, it will append the contents towards the end of it. Okay. So those are the major differences. So file handling, generally you don't go very complex into it. These information is enough. And one more thing is to deleting a file and all that. For that you have to import an OS module, and you have something called remove method in it. OS remove file name. That's it. It will remove. But it is always good to check first if the file exists or not. So how do you do it? There's a function called path.exist. As my cursor points, path.exist. So for which, if that comes to be true, it means it is existing. Then you can remove. Else, say does not exist. The last thing is, if you wanted to remove a folder, again in the OS module, you have another function called rmdir. Okay, remove directory. So that will remove your folders. So that is about functions. Let's have some example. Okay, I've already have an file here, that is exam.txt. So I just wrote 2 lines in that. So let's try to open that file in our Python. So first I have to import it. Okay, everything, if you want every function, module, files, or whatever it is, you just have to import it. Or your files, you can also mention the complete path, I guess. Then you don't need to import it. We'll just check it. Okay. Okay, control Z, sorry. I'll give some space so that you'll understand. Okay, I'll create some object, file object. I'll say f is equal to, as I said, you have a method called open. So inside this open method, I'm taking, what is my file name? That is exm.txt. Okay, this is my file name. First, inside the open function or method, you have to give first the file name. Then you have to give a comma, and then you have to give the mode in which you have to open. I've already said 4 modes, right? The basic modes: create, read, write, append. And 2 more things which you can add is binary or text format. So these are the modes you have available with you. I'm going to take RT. So that should be in quotes, single or double quotes, whichever you wish. So I've taken single quotes and I've taken R and T. This means that open this file in read mode. So you cannot write to it. Next thing is text mode. So it will consider the content in it as characters, set of characters. So I have my object open. Okay, file object. Now let's, as I said, if you wanted to read each line from this file, you can use a for loop. I took something called x in f, and you should have a colon. This is very important to define the for loop. And then I'm printing it. Okay, I printed x. So let's see what we get printed. You see, it has printed, hello, my name is Bindu and I'm an employee. So these are the 2 lines in my file. So now one more thing to remember, we can see the errors, what can happen. I'll just give exm1. Actually, that, as you see towards the left, there's no such file exm1.txt. Just to show you that if the file does not exist, what does read mode do? See, it has thrown an error, no such file or directory. I will try to, what else error I said, execute, I'll just try to write. It will be empty, obviously. See, first it did not show that file does not exist, because if with write mode a new file will be created. As you see towards the left, there's a file called exm1.txt. This file did not exist earlier. You see my cursor towards the left, exm1.txt. It means that with write mode, if the file does not exist, it's not going to throw an error. It is going to create one. The error obviously which is pointing out here is that I am trying to open this file, but whereas it is not opened in read mode, I just gave W mode. One more thing, there's no pen in it, so I'll just give plus here. See now, there's no error in it. Why? Because I've given a plus. As I said, plus is for both read and write. Okay, so W plus is for reading and writing and text mode, and it did not print any content because obviously xm1.txt is empty. I'll show you. See, xm1.txt is empty, so I'll give some content here. Hello, hi. So that is all. And one more thing to be noted here. Then I just gave hello and hi to my text, and why is it empty now? I didn't get any content. One more thing to be noted, as I said, if you open it in write mode, it is going to clear all the content in it. It will be a new and fresh file. So be careful while opening a file in write mode. Okay. See, it became empty. I've already given some text, hello and hi. Okay. So now let me add some content to it. Again, hello, hi. I'll go to main and then open it in append mode. So let's see what will happen now. What happened? Where's the content? Hello and hi has not been removed. See, hello and hi still exist. While when I open in write mode, it got vanished because it is going to completely sweep out the content in it. What else? I think we have given everything. Did we miss something? Let me just check. I think we have created, read, write, append, and everything. Okay. The next concept we have to discuss is exception handling. Outside. I'll just open it in a slideshow mode. Okay. Okay. So errors and exceptions. So mostly people might get an doubt like what is an error, what is an exception. So earlier also we were thinking about a recursive function going into an infinite loop, or some for loop goes into infinite loop. Will it be an exception or something? It is not an exception actually. It's some there's some issue in the logic. So that's a logical error. That's an error which we have to deal with. Developers have to deal with. So syntactical errors and logical errors are the things we have to look into it. Syntactical errors, we will be showing a red line there and something like that. It will not get executed. So there you can get to know what errors are there. But there are something called exceptions, which they are syntactically correct. They are logically, it might be correct for you. For example, you're dividing two numbers, it's logically correct, but sometimes the denominator might go to 0. So that's an exception. You do not expect that. Okay, you do not expect such behavior, abnormal behavior. So the normal flow of the program will get obstructed and you will see abnormal results. So that's called exceptions. So such things you have to carefully handle in your program so as that you don't see such behavior or some sudden crashes in your program. So that's how we have things called errors and exceptions. And in Python you have built-in exceptions. So you see the first one, that is base exception. It is the base class. Okay, as I said, Python is full of objects. It's an object-oriented thing. So everything is an object. So here, every exception which occurs is an object of some or the other class. So you have all classes to define it. First one is a base exception. From that, you have something called exception. And from that, the tree goes and you see all the exceptions in this tree. Okay. You have zero division error, you have IO error, index error, tree error, and all this. We'll just get to know what they are, and we'll also deal with that in a live demo. So you see here, I'll just name few Attribute error. If suppose in some class you don't have some attribute but trying to refer to it, then end of file. You see, you reach to the end of the file, but you're still trying to read some lines from it. End of file. I error, index error, key error. So key error is nothing but in some dictionary you are trying to refer to some key, but there's no key in it. We have seen this while we are dealing with data types. You are trying to refer to some value in the dictionary and it is not existing. Okay. Next, index error. Suppose a set or a list consists of 4 elements. You're trying to get the 5th element. That is index error. Then you have name error. If suppose some variable is not declared, but you're trying to use it, that's a name error. And stop iteration, it's for iterators. If you're trying to get the next element also, but you don't have next element. You have type error when you're trying to deal with the wrong data types and functions. Value error, you're trying to assign some, for example, you see here square root function actually accepts an integer, but you're giving negative. So zero division error. So if you're dividing some number by 0, it will find out. So these all are predefined ones. Okay. So you can also have user defined. We are going to look into it. So you see here, there are 2 ways of handling exceptions in Python. Okay. The first one is raising or throwing. Next one is catching. Raising means you don't deal with it in the present code, but the code which called it, the function which called it will handle it. That is throw. Next one is catching. Catching means you handle it. You say what you have to do. The exception is occurred, what we have to do. So that handling, that you say how to do, that is called catching. So to raising or throwing, we have a keyword called raise. For for catching, we have something called try and except blocks. Okay. So 2 types of exception handlings, raising and catching. For raising, you have keyword raise. For catching, you have try except blocks. So first thing, I'll just show a live example of this. Let's look into the, first the theoretical things what we have to know. So to raise an exception, as I said, you need a keyword called raise. So here you see in red, the example I gave, x is equal to hello. This is not an exception. You can assign a string value to a variable. This is syntactically correct, logically correct, and it doesn't throw any error here. But your intention is you don't want to have x. You don't want a string value to be assigned to x. So the user is free to raise an exception here. The developer can raise an exception stating, see, you're checking first, type of x is int. So raise type error. As I said, when the type of an some value is wrong, then you raise this error. So here you are explicitly raising it. So you're free to raise an exception, and we have raised it saying only integers are allowed. Okay, so I'll just give some application to it. For example, you have some database and you have something called employee database. So in this employee database, the first column, let it be employee number. Okay, so you don't want the employee number to be string. It should always be numerical. So if suppose you're thinking to be, okay, so then in such cases, you can check for exceptions. You can check for things like this, and then you can raise an exception. Okay, in such cases, you can use raise keyword. Next, try and except. This is the second way of handling exceptions. So you have something called 4 keywords called try, except, else, and finally. In try, you put the code called the code which you think will raise an exception. You put it in try. In except, you put the code. If exception occurred, what I have to do, that will be placed in except. Else, if there is no exception raised, everything went well, then you want this code to run. You put it in else. Finally, this code will always run either an exception is there or not. So why do you need a final block? This is because if you for example, opened some file and you did not close it, so someone else is trying to write. So some things like that. So to clear up such mishaps, you use finally block. You should close that file. So you can use finally block. Okay. So for such cases, this should compulsorily surely happen before ending the program. This should happen. So then put the finally block. Okay. Then here is a simple example. You have tried. See, I have given a variable there. I'm asking the user to input some variable, and I'm trying to divide that divide 10 with the input variable. If suppose user has inputted 0, then first except statement, that is 0 division error, will get activated and it will print you have divided by 0. And then in case if the user has entered string, then it will say you did not enter an integer. So you can have multiple except blocks. For a single try, you can have multiple except blocks, each one for different exception. If you wanted to catch any exception, you can just put exception class there. Instead of 0 division error, you can put exception and it will catch all the errors. Okay, exceptions. Else block, you see, the answer is D. Okay, so here we have put the case in which no exception has occurred. Okay, so else block execute if no exception has occurred. Last, end of the lesson. So this is as a simple example I've just put it, but if you're dealing with files or some object reference or something, you can use this finally block to clear that. So this is how things happen. You see the console result below, user has entered 0 and then an exception has occurred, but still you see end of lesson has been printed. So before the program getting terminated, it will execute the finally block. So that is how finally block is helpful, just not to make your things clumsy. Is if you want to have some user-defined exceptions. So for user-defined exceptions, you use some keyword called class, then your exception name, and in the braces, parenthesis, you should have this exception class here. You should have this word here because you have to inherit from the base exception class. Okay. So then you have a constructor init in it. That is mandatory for all classes. We are going to deal about classes in the next session. That is how a constructor has been called. And then you have string. Okay, here this is to deal, this is also an existing one. This is to deal, just have written to return the value. So whatever value the function is called with or the class or object is triggered with, that value the self will return back. So simple, this is just to return the value with whatever exception you have created. Okay, so I'll just show you a demo of this exception. We'll just take some I'll get some menu here. Okay, I'll just give a try block and then I'll try to sum is equal to, no, choose result, not sum, is equal to 5 divided by 0. Okay, so except I'll give 0 division error and I'll print. So denominator is 0. Okay, now I'll put a finally block. Then I'll say print I came here. I'll also put an else statement so that you also know when that case will be executed. Okay, else, then I'll print it. There's something called I'll just print the rest, right? That's better, right? Okay, so we are ready. I just gave an I just try to divide two numbers, and if there's an exception called division error, then it will exception arise, else you'll be able to see the result, and you have a finally block, and let's see when each one will get executed. So you see here, denominator is 0. It means that error has arisen. 0 division error exception has occurred, so except block got executed. That is why that statement got printed here. Okay, so and you see the else block is not printed, I mean not executed, because the case is there's an exception. If there's no exception, else block will get executed. And you also see it printed I came here. Why is this? Because I said finally block get executed whether irrespective of exception occurred or not. Okay, so I'll try to divide it with valid number. I have just 5, so let's see what will happen. See, it printed 1.0 and so else block got executed because no exception occurred, and then finally block. See, in both cases finally block got executed. So that is how finally works. And you saw when else will execute, when except will execute. So one more thing to note here, you see 5 divided by 5, you didn't see 1, it was 1.0. So this was one of the improvements to Python 3. There are a lot more, we're not going to get deep into it. So that was one I just want to mention. And did I mention everything regarding this things? Okay. That is about exception handling. Mostly you'll not find a case where you're going to define your exceptions. Most of the exceptions are defined. You have large set of them available. In case if you do really wanted something, then you can go with defining your own things. So I'm just making sure that I have discussed everything about exceptions. Okay. Let's get back to our okay, I'll just give you a raise also. Okay, same example I'll try. X is equal to high if not type of X is int, then raise type error. Okay, let's try this. See, type error has been raised. Why? Because I said X should be an integer and it's a string here, so it has raised an exception. And one more thing to note, as you saw in the first try case, these pink color things were not printed because I handled the exception. If you don't handle it, you get such way. And here it is because I wantingly wanted to raise it, we have got it this way. So I've shown you raise in the two types of handling the exceptions. Now let's get back to our PPT. And okay, the last thing I wanted to tell you is how the installation happens. So as I said, Python is free and open source. You can just download it. I've given the links below. You see this python.org.downloads. You get downloads for different OSs there. And the second link which I've given is HTML document. Okay, it's a documentation, Python official documentation, where we will have all the, information related to how we have to install, what is required for what OS and all that. Okay, the simple thing is I've just jotted down a few steps here. Just install this 3.8, the latest one from the below URL. Then after clicking install now, you'll be able to see the Python in your user folder, C username or something like that. So there you will find it. And then if you wanted to, right away you can start it. You need not change any variables or anything. All the path variables will be set default. If you wanted to explicitly do it, you can do it. Else you can directly take some text editor, write hello or something, print hello, save it as .py, go to this path, run it. Okay, in C, go to the path where Python is installed, py space your file name. That's it. It's good to go. Okay, install, write some code in your text file, save it with .py extension, go to some command editor, go to the place where you have Python, you say py space your file. That's it. Okay, that is that simple. So I just gave a screenshot to us, right? That is just how installation happens. I think you're familiar with most of the softwares is the same. So this is a hands-on. So this application I've kept it very simple, and at the same time I've included all the things which I've discussed throughout this session. So you just have to create one new file and write content to it. Okay, with almost all the data types, use all the 9 data types. And then write a function to count how many words have been, you give some input, write a function to take input, count the number of repeated words in that. That's a separate thing. And then print the size of the previous file, and write another function to copy one file content to another file, and then combine each line from the first file to second, read a random line from a file, access the file, try if it is closed or not, then handle the exception in all the above cases. So these are the most simple ones which are given. So all these simple tasks, you club it into a single program, save it as some sample.py or something, run it and see how far you're able to get the things which we have discussed now. If you do have any issues or any errors or questions, please get back or get in touch with us. So, you do have any questions? You can handle it.
Thank you so much, Rupa, for the detailed session. I hope it is useful for most of the people who has joined today. So we'll try to take some questions, like we are already at 12:30, but we'll spend some 5 minutes in answering the questions. Can the moderator display the questions so that Bindu can answer them?
Yes, you have to use different type of brackets. That is how the Python will get to know that what type of data it is. Because as I said, it is not, we are not explicitly mentioning this is a list, this is a tuple. We are not telling to the Python. So how will it know? It will know by the way you declare it. Okay, so it is mandatory to mention different braces. That is how it's going to differentiate between list, tuple, set, or dictionary, whatever. For list, it is square brackets. For tuple, it is parenthesis. For set, it is curly braces. For dictionary, also it's curly braces, but you have something called key value pairs. That is how it differentiates between set and dictionary and all of this. Okay. Why is lambda function was used? I already mentioned it in the session. It's for single liner functions, shorthand and short-lived anonymous functions. And then in such cases, you can use this. Lambda, then normal definition is better. Yeah, for execution will be faster because there's a single line, you need not store it, there's a name to it and all that. Okay. Is it must and should to give import statement at top only? Obviously, you should give it because the compiler should know that you are importing that. Then how will it know wherever you mention? But at least before what you use. How to calculate the execution time of program or command when you run? For some of the editors, you see the compilation time below. So that is how you get to know the compilation time. Okay. Is it always required to give exception type? What if we don't know what exception? I already mentioned this question where I said you can give exception word. Okay, exception is a base class, so it will handle all type of exceptions. If you don't know what exception it is, you can just catch that. Okay. How do we print the file size? You have a function called size. Okay, you just give that f dot size, you'll get the size of the file. Next question. Can I get the 8th question? Okay. Okay, then I think these are the questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Bindu, so much. Moderator will show you the feedback form link in the chat box. I request everyone to fill the feedback form. And as mentioned in the flyer, like we'll be having the continuation of this session next week at the same time. That's on August 15th, 10:30 to 12:30. And we'll be able to cover the complete Python classes by that time. Request everyone who has joined today to come for the next session as well, so that it will be a complete session for you. If you have any questions or any information needed, you can ping us on the InterSkill number, or you can use our mail us at interskillteam@gmail.com. The same Zoom link will be used for the next session as well. And regarding the slide deck and the recording session, our team will be sending to all the people who has registered and who has attended this session. We have taken all the mail IDs. We'll be sending the recording as well as the PPT to all the people. If you have any questions furthermore, like they will be answered in the next session, that is on August 15th. I hope everyone has got the feedback form link. Request you to fill over there. Feel free to join the WhatsApp group as well, so that you will get updated with the more information on that. Yeah, thanks Bindu once again. Thanks for your valuable time.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Everyone.
Yeah. Now we are done with the